The house my grandmother left me was my safe haven until a whispered phone call and a glowing laptop screen revealed my husband's shocking betrayal. My home was pending sale, and I had no idea. The old house sighed around me, a familiar, comforting sound I'd known my entire life. It was the sound of settling foundations, of wood breathing with the evening chill. My grandmother used to say the house was just getting comfortable for the night, tucking itself in like we were. I was sitting in the worn armchair by the window, a cup of chamomile tea steaming in my hands, watching the rain paint shimmering streaks on the glass. Upstairs, our 5-year-old daughter, Lily, was fast asleep, her gentle snores a soft rhythm in the quiet home. This house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was my inheritance, my sanctuary. The only place I had ever truly felt safe. Every scuff on the hardwood floors, every faint pencil mark on the kitchen door frame measuring my height as a child was a part of my story. My husband, Mark, was in his study, the door slightly ajar. For the past few weeks, he'd been spending most of his evenings in there, hunched over his laptop, speaking in low, intense tones on the phone. He called it his new venture, a tech startup with his old college buddy, Greg. He was electric, with an energy I hadn't seen in years, full of talk about seed funding, scalability, and market disruption. I was happy for him, truly. He'd felt stuck in his corporate sales job for so long, and I wanted to see him thrive. But there was a frantic, almost desperate edge to his excitement that pricked at the back of my mind. Maura's secretiveness had crept into our marriage, thin and sharp as a shard of glass. He'd angle his phone away when I walked into the room, or quickly minimize a spreadsheet on his screen, offering a tight, forced smile. "Just boring numbers, honey," he'd say. "You don't need to worry your pretty little head about it." Tonight, his voice was different. It wasn't the usual confident pitch of a man planning a business. It was hushed, conspiratorial. I leaned forward in my chair, straining to hear over the drumming rain. "No, Greg, she has no idea," Mark whispered. My heart gave a little jolt. She? Who was she? It's better this way. Less emotional baggage to deal with. There was a pause. I held my breath, the tea growing cold in my hands. "Look, the market's hot right now. The appraisal came in even higher than we expected. Once the sale goes through, we'll have more than enough capital to launch properly. We just need to get her on board to sign the final papers." The sale? What sale? My mind raced. We hadn't talked about selling anything. Our car was paid off, and our only real asset was the house. My house. A cold dread, heavy and suffocating, began to pool in my stomach. It couldn't be. He wouldn't. This house was in my name, a gift from my grandmother's will. It was my one piece of solid ground, the anchor for our family. Mark had always called it our house, but we both knew the legal truth. He couldn't sell it without me. Could he? I set my cup down with a soft clink and walked quietly to his study door, my bare feet silent on the old wooden floor. His back was to me. "I'll handle Clara," he was saying, and his voice laced with a frustrating mix of affection and condescension. "She's sentimental about the place, but she'll see the logic. This is our future, Greg. Her future. Lily's future. She'll thank me for it later." Thank him? Thank him for what? For plotting behind my back to sell my childhood home, the only home our daughter had ever known. The anger that flared up was hot and sudden, chasing away the cold dread. I pushed the door open fully. It creaked loudly, and Mark spun around in his chair, his eyes wide with surprise. He fumbled with his phone, quickly ending the call. "Clara, I didn't hear you," he said, his voice a little too high, his smile a little too wide. "Everything okay?" "Who are you talking to?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "What sale were you talking about, Mark?" He let out a short, dismissive laugh, leaning back in his chair and trying to look relaxed. "Oh, that, just business stuff, honey. Greg and I are looking at selling off some old server equipment we were thinking of buying. It's complicated." It didn't sound complicated. I pressed, stepping further into the room. It sounded like you were talking about me. You said, she has no idea, and that you'd handle Clara. His face hardened. The mask of the easygoing husband slipped, revealing the stressed, cornered man beneath. He stood up, towering over me. "Listen, Clara," he said, his voice dropping to a low, warning tone. "I'm trying to build a future for this family. It involves high-stakes finance and making tough decisions. It's stressful, and I'm trying to shield you from it." "Shield me or hide it from me?" I shot back, my voice rising. "Dee, you were talking about an appraisal. You were talking about a sale. What are you selling, Mark?" He took a step towards me, his jaw tight. For a second, I thought he might actually tell me the truth. Instead, his eyes went cold, and he delivered the words that would echo in my head for days. "Don't butt in. This is adult business," he snapped, his voice sharp and final. "I'm the one who earns the money. I'm the one who understands the market. You take care of Lily and the house, and let me take care of the real world. Now I have work to do." He turned his back on me, a clear dismissal, and sat down at his desk, pointedly opening his laptop. I stood there, frozen, the words hanging in the air between us like poison. Adult business, as if I were a child playing with dolls while he went off to do important things. The humiliation was a physical blow. I stumbled back out of the room, closing the door behind me, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and hurt. I went to the kitchen and mechanically started washing my forgotten teacup, my hands shaking. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it really was just some business deal I didn't understand. He was trying to provide for us, after all. I had to trust him. Didn't I? Later that night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Mark's steady breathing beside me. Sleep was impossible. His words, "Don't butt in," played on a loop in my mind. The house felt different now, no longer a sanctuary but a secret, a point of contention. I slipped out of bed, the floorboards creaking under my weight. I needed a glass of water, or maybe just to walk, to feel the solidness of my home beneath my feet. And as I passed his study, I noticed a sliver of light from under the door. He'd forgotten to turn off his computer. On impulse, I pushed the door open. His laptop was on the desk, the screen glowing softly in the dark room. He must have just closed the lid without putting it to sleep. I hesitated for only a second before walking over and lifting the screen. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a spreadsheet or a business plan on the screen. It was a real estate website. And displayed in glossy, high-resolution pictures was my home, my living room, my kitchen, Lily's bedroom with her little teddy bear propped on the pillow. Below the photos, in bold letters, was a description detailing the charming, move-in, ready property and a price that made my head spin. But it was the single, a devastating word in bright red text at the top of the page that made the world drop out from under me. Pending. Pending. The word pulsed on the screen, a venomous red eye staring back at me in the darkness of the study. My blood ran cold, then hot. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a hypothetical exploration of the market. This was real. An offer had been made, and an offer had been accepted. My home, the repository of my entire life's memories, had been bartered and sold like a used car while I sat in the next room, sipping tea. The air in my lungs turned to ice. I felt a dizzying sense of vertigo, as if the floor had dissolved beneath my feet, leaving me suspended over a black, bottomless chasm of betrayal. My first instinct was to storm into our bedroom, rip the covers off Mark, and scream until my throat was raw. But his dismissive words echoed in my ears. "Don't butt in. This is adult business." He saw me as a child, an emotional obstacle. Screaming would only prove his point. Number. If he was going to operate in the world of adult business, then I would have to meet him there, with evidence, with cold, hard facts. My hands, though shaking, moved with a newfound purpose. I pulled out my phone, the screen's glow illuminating my pale, stricken face. I took a photo of the laptop screen, the listing, the horrible red pending staring back at me. I then clicked on the browser's history. It was a digital breadcrumb trail of his deceit. Zillow, Realtor.com, mortgage calculators, articles titled How to Convince Your Spouse to Sell and Legalities of Selling an Inherited Property. My stomach churned. He hadn't just thought about this. He had researched how to manipulate me into it. I minimized the browser window. On his desktop was a folder brazenly labeled Project Launch. My heart hammered against my ribs as I clicked it open. Inside were business plans, financial projections, and another folder simply labeled House. I opened it. There they were. A copy of the appraisal report he'd mentioned, a professional photography contract, and an email thread with a realtor named Brenda. I started reading from the beginning. The emails went back 2 months. Brenda, Mark's first email read, "My wife and I are looking to sell our property at 127 Elm Street. We need a quick, quiet sale. The primary goal is to liquidate the asset for a business investment." My wife and I. The lie was so blatant, so casual. I scrolled down, my disgust growing with every line. Brenda's replies were cheerful and professional. She'd outlined her strategy, the staging process, the commission rates. Mark had handled everything. He had let the photographers in one afternoon when I was out with Lily at the park. He had scheduled the private viewings for times I was at my weekly grocery run. He had orchestrated this entire charade behind my back, in my own home. Then I saw it. The offer. It was a PDF attachment from 2 days ago. A full-price, all-cash offer from a development company. At the bottom was the purchase and sale agreement. I scrolled through the legalese, my eyes scanning for the signature lines. There was one for the buyer, one for Mark, and one for me. His was signed with a neat digital signature. Mine was starkly, terrifyingly blank. He hadn't forged it yet. He was waiting. Waiting to handle Clara and get me to sign the final papers, just as he'd told Greg on the phone. The closing date was listed at the top of the contract. It was for next Friday, 8 days from now. I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a conspiracy. He had moved every piece on the chessboard, cornering me without my even knowing we were playing a game. The sheer audacity of it, the depth of the deception, stole my breath. This wasn't the man I married. The man I married would have talked to me, dreamed with me. This man, this stranger, plotted against me. I closed the laptop, the soft click echoing in the silent house. I walked out of the study and back into our bedroom, the phone clutched in my hand like a weapon. The rage was a living thing inside me now, a cold, controlled fire. I didn't rip the covers off him. I walked to his side of the bed and said his name, my voice low and devoid of any warmth. "Mark." He stirred, grumbling. "Clara? What is it? What time is it?" "It's time for some adult business," I said. I switched on the bedside lamp, flooding the room in a harsh yellow light. He blinked, shielding his eyes. I held my phone in front of his face, the picture of the real estate listing glowing on the screen. "Care to explain what this is?" He squinted at the phone, and I saw the moment recognition dawned. All the color drained from his face. He sat bolt upright in bed, sputtering. Where did you see that? Clara, it's not what it looks like." "Isn't it?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Because it looks like you've sold my grandmother's house without telling me. It looks like you've accepted an offer. It looks like the closing is in 8 days. He scrambled for a defense, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape route. "I was going to tell you. I was waiting for the right time. It was a surprise." "A surprise?" I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that didn't sound like me at all. "You call this a surprise? I call it the ultimate betrayal, Mark. You lied to me for months. You let strangers walk through our daughter's bedroom. You made a deal to sell the roof over our heads, and my name isn't even on the contract yet." That's when he switched tactics. The cornered animal came out fighting. He threw the covers off and stood up, his voice rising to match mine. "I did it for U.S., Clara. For our future. This stupid house is just bricks and wood, but my business, our company, that's real. It's our ticket to a better life, a life where you don't have to worry about money ever again." My grandmother left me this house so I would never have to worry, I shot back. It was my security, my inheritance, and you're trying to steal it from me to fund some pipe dream with Greg. It's not a pipe dream, he roared, his face red with anger. It's a multi-million-dollar idea, and you're too sentimental and small-minded to see it. I am trying to build an empire for our family, and you're crying about some drafty old house. Don't you dare talk about my home that way. He took a step closer, his eyes blazing. I have to. Someone in this family has to be the realist. Someone has to make the hard decisions. The buyers are a development company. The deal is done. The closing is next week. When all you have to do is sign the papers. He saw the defiant look on my face, and his expression turned cold and calculating. He lowered his voice, but it carried more menace than his shouting. If you don't sign, Clara, the deal falls through. I lose everything. My reputation, the seed money, everything. Greg has already remortgaged his own house based on this sale going through. You don't sign that paper, you don't just ruin me. You ruin Greg. You ruin his wife, his 2 little kids. Their future is on your shoulders now, too. Do you really want to be the person who destroys 2 families because you can't let go of a pile of old memories? His words hung in the air, a perfectly crafted cage of guilt and obligation. He wasn't just threatening his own future. He was holding Greg's innocent family hostage while making me the potential executioner. I could see it in his eyes. The smug certainty of a man who believes he's just checkmated his opponent. He expected tears. He expected me to crumble, to apologize for being so emotional, to promise to sign the papers and be the supportive wife he clearly felt he deserved. He thought he had won. But in that moment, something inside me didn't break. It froze. It hardened into a diamond-sharp point of clarity. The sentimental, accommodating Clara he knew had just left the building. I looked at him, my expression unreadable. I didn't shout, I didn't cry. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, until the confident smirk on his face began to falter. So that's your play, I said, my voice unnervingly calm. You lie, you deceive, you sell my home out from under me, and when I catch you, you try to emotionally blackmail me by threatening to ruin another family. That's your version of adult business? He was taken aback by my composure. Clara, be reasonable. No, I cut him off, holding up a hand. You don't get to use that word with me. You don't get to talk about reason. I will not be manipulated, and I will not be discussing this with you any further tonight. I turned and walked to the closet, pulling out a duffel bag. What are you doing? He demanded, his voice a mixture of confusion and irritation. I'm taking care of my daughter, I said, pulling clothes from my drawers and stuffing them into the bag. Since you're so busy with your real-world business, I'll handle the one thing that actually matters. Lily and I will be staying somewhere else for a few days. Panic flashed in his eyes. And this wasn't part of his plan. He needed me here, under his roof, where he could control the narrative, where he could wear me down with his toxic blend of promises and threats. Don't be ridiculous, Clara. Where are you going to go? It's the middle of the night. That's not your concern, I said, zipping the bag closed. I went into Lily's room. She was sleeping peacefully, her little chest rising and falling, completely unaware of the earthquake that had just shattered her parents' marriage. Looking at her, so innocent and safe in the home I was now fighting for, solidified my resolve. I gently scooped her up, blankets and all. She stirred, murmuring something in her sleep, and snuggled against my shoulder. The warmth of her little body was an anchor in my swirling sea of fury and fear. Mark was waiting in the hallway, blocking my path. Ying, you can't just leave, he hissed, trying to keep his voice down. We need to talk this out. You had months to talk to me, Mark, I whispered back, my voice like ice. You chose to lie instead. Now get out of my way. He looked from my cold, determined face to the sleeping child in my arms. He knew he couldn't physically stop me without waking Lily and creating a scene he couldn't control. Defeated, he stepped aside, his face a thundercloud of rage. Fine, he spat. Run away, But this problem isn't going anywhere. That closing date is next Friday, and you're going to have to make a choice." I didn't dignify that with a response. I walked past him, down the stairs that had creaked under my feet since I was a child, and out the front door into the rain-slicked night. I didn't look back. I drove to my best friend Sarah's house. She opened the door in her bathrobe, her face creased with sleep and concern. When she saw me, Lily, asleep on my shoulder, my face pale and tear-streaked, she pulled us both inside without a word. I laid Lily down on the guest bed before finally breaking down in Sarah's kitchen, the whole sordid story pouring out of me between ragged sobs. Sarah listened, her expression shifting from shock to pure, unadulterated rage on my behalf. She refilled my mug of tea, her hand resting on my arm. "That absolute snake," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "Clara, this is insane. He can't do this." "But he is, Sarah," I whispered, wiping my eyes. "And the worst part is, I don't know if he's lying about Greg's family. Greg and his wife Jessica are good people. They have 2 kids, younger than Lily. And if he's telling the truth, what kind of monster would I be to pull the rug out from under them? And what kind of monster is he for putting you in that position?" she countered fiercely. "This is classic manipulation. He creates a crisis, then makes you the only one who can solve it, but only on his terms. You need a lawyer, Clara, first thing tomorrow morning." "I know," I said, my mind already racing. "But a lawyer can't solve the moral problem. I need to know if he's telling the truth about the remortgage. I need to know if I'm really about to destroy another family." "How can you find that out?" Sarah asked. "You can't exactly call Greg and ask." An idea began to form in my mind, a risky, terrifying idea. "No," I said slowly, looking at my phone on the table. "I can't call Greg, but I can call Jessica." Sarah's eyes widened. "Are you sure? What if she's in on it?" "I don't think so. From what I know of her, she's not the type. She's a stay-at-home mom like me. We've talked at company picnics. She reminds me of me." I felt a sick kinship with this woman who might be just as much in the dark as I had been. It was a long shot. It was intrusive and messy, but it was the only way. The next morning, after a sleepless night on Sarah's couch, I waited until Lily was happily eating pancakes and watching cartoons. My hands were trembling as I found Jessica's number in my contacts. I stepped out onto Sarah's back porch, the cool morning air doing little to calm the frantic beating of my heart. I pressed the call button. It rang once, twice. On the 3rd ring, she picked up. "Hello?" Her voice was cheerful, slightly distracted, with the familiar background noise of young children. "Jessica. Hi, it's Clara, Mark's wife." "Clara, hi, what a surprise. Is everything okay?" Her tone shifted immediately to one of concern. My throat went dry. This was it. There was no turning back. "I'm so sorry to call you like this, and I know this is going to sound completely insane," I started, my voice shaking slightly. "But I have to ask you something incredibly important about Mark and Greg's business. I need you to be honest with me. Is it true that you and Greg have remortgaged your house to fund it?" There was a moment of absolute dead silence on the other end of the line. I held my breath, my knuckles white from gripping the phone. Then I heard a sharp, sudden intake of breath from Jessica, followed by a single choked word that changed everything. "Do you who?" "Who?" The word was a fragile wisp of confusion, so quiet I almost wasn't sure I'd heard it. It wasn't the response of a woman in on a scheme, nor the indignation of someone wrongly accused. It was the sound of a blindfold being ripped away. "I'm sorry?" I asked, needing her to repeat it, needing to be sure. "Who did you say?" "No, I mean, who told you that?" Jessica's voice was shaky now, the background noise of her children fading as if she'd moved to a quieter room. "Remortgage our house? Clara, what are you talking about? Greg told me the funding was coming from a private investor Mark secured, a silent partner." The floor, which I thought had already vanished, dropped away another 1,000 feet. A silent partner. Me. I was the silent partner, and my signature was the investment. He hadn't just lied to me. He'd constructed an entirely different reality for his business partner. The blackmail he'd used against me, the story of Greg's family teetering on the brink of financial ruin because of my sentimentality, it was all a lie. A cruel, calculated fabrication designed to break my will. "Clara, are you there?" Jessica's voice was filled with a rising panic that mirrored my own. "What's going on? Greg wouldn't." "Jessica," I said, my own voice now eerily steady as the rage inside me cooled into something harder and more dangerous. "Mark is trying to sell my house, the one my grandmother left me. He's telling me the entire business and your family's financial security depends on the sale. He told me you and Greg remortgaged your home." I heard a sharp, distressed sound on the other end of the line, maybe a sob, maybe a gasp. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, Clara, no, that's not true. Greg's been so stressed. He said Mark was handling all the financials, that this investor was particular. He's been working day and night. He thinks you're both on board, that you're so excited about this." We were two sides of the same counterfeit coin. He'd told her I was an enthusiastic partner, and he'd told me I was an emotional liability. He'd played us both, keeping us isolated in our own little bubbles of deceit. "Jessica, I need your help," I said, the plan that had been a vague notion now crystallizing into a sharp, focused objective. "I can't let him do this. Not to me, and not to your family. He's building this entire venture on a foundation of lies, and it will collapse and take everyone down with it." "What can I do?" she asked, her voice trembling but resolute. "He's my husband, but this is wrong." "Does Greg have any of the business paperwork at your house? The partnership agreement? Anything with the investor's information on it?" I think so. He has a box of files in his home office. He told me not to touch it, said it was all highly confidential." "Of course he did," I muttered. "Can you get into it? Can you send me pictures of everything? I need to see what he's been telling Greg. I need to know what he's been promising in my name." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I can do that. Greg's taking the kids to the park this afternoon. I'll have a few hours." "Thank you, Jessica," I said, a wave of relief washing over me. I wasn't alone in this anymore. "Don't say anything to Greg yet. Let me see what's in those files first. Then we have to be smart about this." We hung up and I stood on Sarah's porch, the morning sun on my face, feeling like a general preparing for war. Sarah came out with a fresh cup of coffee for me. "You look different," she said, studying my face. "What happened?" "He lied," I said, the words tasting like ash. "The whole story about Greg's family, the remortgage, it was all a lie." Sarah's jaw dropped. "That son of a—" "I know," I interrupted. "But he made a mistake. He thought he was isolating me, but he's just given me an ally." For the next few hours, I was a coiled spring of nervous energy. I played with Lily, built Lego towers, and read her stories, all while my phone burned a hole in my pocket. My mind was a whirlwind of half-formed plans and legal questions. Sarah had already found the number of a top-rated family law attorney, and I had an appointment for the next morning. But first, I needed ammunition. Finally, around 2 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a flurry of text messages from Jessica. Picture after picture of documents began to load. I opened the first one. It was the official partnership agreement for Innovate Future Tech, LLC. I scanned the document. It listed 2 managing partners, Mark Davis and Gregory Peterson. So far, so standard. But then I scrolled down to the section on capital contributions. Greg's contribution was listed as $50,000 cash and intellectual property. Below that was Mark's. It read, capital contribution of $750,000 to be provided upon execution of the pending real estate transaction at 127 Elm Street. He had put it in writing. He had contractually obligated my house to his business. But it was the next document that made my blood boil. It was a signed letter of intent, not from a silent partner, but seemingly from me. It was a typed letter addressed to the partnership, stating that I, Clara Davis, fully supported the venture and willingly committed the full proceeds from the sale of my inherited property as my husband's capital contribution. It was flowery and supportive, filled with phrases like our shared dream and investing in our family's future. At the bottom was a signature, my signature. It was a forgery and a damned good one. He must have scanned it from our marriage license or some other document I'd signed. He had literally stolen my identity to perpetuate his fraud. I felt a cold, terrifying wave of violation wash over me. This went beyond a marital dispute. This was criminal. This was fraud. He hadn't just been waiting for my signature on the sale agreement. He had already started signing my name on other documents, creating a paper trail that implicated me in his scheme. He was boxing me in from every angle, making it look like I was a willing participant. I spent the rest of the afternoon on the phone with the lawyer Sarah had recommended, explaining the situation. He was appalled. He confirmed that what Mark had done with the letter of intent was forgery, and that the entire business partnership was predicated on fraud. He advised me on the immediate steps I needed to take to protect myself and my asset. My first call was to the real estate agent, Brenda. My heart pounded as I dialed her number. "Brenda, this is Clara Davis from 127 Elm Street." "Clara, hello. Mark has told me so much about you. I'm so thrilled about the offer. It's a fantastic price. We're just waiting on your final signature to move forward with the closing," she said, her voice oozing professional cheer. "That's actually why I'm calling, Brenda," I said, my voice as level as I could make it. "There seems to have been a misunderstanding. The house is not for sale." The silence on the other end was profound. I'm sorry," she stammered, "but the contract is signed. We have an accepted offer. Mark acted without my knowledge or consent," I stated clearly. "The property is in my name only. I am the sole owner. I have not signed, nor will I be signing, any sale agreement. Please inform the buyers that the deal is off, effective immediately. I will be having my attorney send you a formal notice to cease and desist all activity related to the sale of my property." I could hear her sputtering, but I didn't wait for a response. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling. It was done. The first domino had fallen. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was Mark. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, immediately. I ignored it again. Then a text message popped up. "What the hell did you do, Clara? Brenda just called me. You are going to call her back right now and tell her you made a mistake." I ignored it. Another text came through, laced with threats and insults. Then another. I put my phone on silent. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. The game had changed. He no longer held all the cards. That evening, after Lily was asleep, I sat with Sarah in her living room when a copy of the forged letter in my hand. We were discussing my next move when there was a loud, aggressive pounding on the front door. We both froze. It wasn't a knock. It was a demand. It sounded like someone was trying to break the door down. I crept to the window and peered through the blinds. My heart leaped into my throat. It wasn't Mark. It was two police officers, their faces grim under the porch light. And standing behind them, looking distraught and holding a piece of paper, was Greg. My blood turned to ice in my veins. Police? Why were the police here? My mind raced through a dozen nightmarish scenarios. Had Mark hurt himself? Had he reported me for kidnapping Lily? I looked at Sarah, my eyes wide with panic. She put a steadying hand on my arm and walked to the door, peering through the peephole to confirm what I'd seen. She took a deep breath and opened it a crack, leaving the security chain in place. "Can I help you, officers?" she asked, her voice impressively calm. "Good evening, ma'am. We're looking for Clara Davis," the taller officer said, his tone polite but firm. "We've received a report of a domestic disturbance and potential fraud. Her husband is concerned for her and their child's safety." concerned for my safety. The hypocrisy was so staggering it almost made me laugh. He hadn't been able to control me, so he'd called the police to intimidate me, to paint me as an unstable runaway. He was trying to wrestle back the narrative. Behind the officers, Greg looked utterly destroyed. He met my eyes through the crack in the door, his face a mask of confusion and betrayal. He was holding a printout of the email I'd sent to the realtor, which she had obviously forwarded straight to Mark. "I'm here," I said, stepping forward so they could see me. "My daughter and I are perfectly safe, officers. My friend graciously offered us a place to stay." "Ma'am, your husband has filed a report stating you left the home abruptly after he confronted you about significant, unauthorized withdrawals from your joint business account," the officer continued, reading from a notepad. "He claims you've threatened to liquidate shared assets and flee." The lie was so audacious, so completely inverted from the truth, that all my fear evaporated and was replaced by a white-hot, diamond-hard resolve. He was trying to frame me as the villain, the thief. He had underestimated me for the last time. "Officers," I said, my voice ringing with a clarity that surprised even myself. "My husband hasn't just lied to you. He has committed multiple felonies. I did not take any money. In fact, he is the one who has committed fraud. He forged my signature on a legal document to secure a fraudulent business loan using my personal assets without my consent. I have proof. And his business partner, Mr. Peterson," I said, looking directly at Greg, "is also a victim of his deception." I saw a flicker of something in Greg's eyes. He had come here believing Mark's story, but my words and the desperate truth in them were starting to break through. "Greg," I said, my voice softening slightly, "he lied to both of us. He told me you remortgaged your house. He told you I was a willing investor. Neither is true. Your entire partnership is based on a forged document promising my inheritance." I held up my phone, and he's showing the picture of the forged letter of intent through the crack in the door. "Is that your copy, Greg?" He looked down at the paper in his hand, then back at my phone, and the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The color drained from his face. He looked at the police officers, then back at me. "She's right," he said, his voice hoarse. "My wife told me something was wrong. Mark told me that letter was from her, that she was excited." The officers exchanged a look. This was far more complicated than a simple domestic dispute. The taller officer sighed. "Ma'am," he said to me, "if you're willing to come down to the station in the morning to make a formal statement, we can open an investigation. For tonight, as long as you and the child are safe, this is a civil matter." "I'll be there at 9 a.m. sharp," I promised. "War's with my lawyer." They nodded, spoke to Greg for another moment, and then left. Greg remained on the porch, looking lost. Sarah finally unhooked the chain and opened the door. "You should come in," she said gently. For the next hour in Sarah's quiet living room, the three of us pieced together the full scope of Mark's deception. I showed Greg the photos of the partnership agreement, the forged letter, all of it. He showed me the endless stream of texts from Mark, painting me as a vindictive, unstable spouse, trying to sabotage their big break. Each new revelation was another layer of sickness. He had been a master puppeteer, pulling all our strings, confident we would never talk to each other. The next morning, I met my lawyer, Mr. Evans, at the police station. Greg was already there, his face grim. We gave our statements, presented our evidence, my forged signature, Greg's fraudulent partnership agreement. The police took it very seriously. Forgery, wire fraud. The list of potential charges was long. When Mark arrived, summoned by the police, he still wore an air of arrogant indignation. He saw me and Greg sitting together and his face contorted in a sneer. "Her too? Did you cry on his shoulder, Clara? Did you poison him against me?" He spat. He clearly thought this was still a domestic squabble he could win with bluster. The moment a detective took him into an interrogation room and laid out the evidence of felony fraud, his entire world crumbled. The fallout was swift and brutal. The development company immediately rescinded their offer on my house, threatening legal action against Mark for misrepresentation. The real estate agent, Brenda, dropped him as a client and cooperated fully with the investigation to save her own license. Greg, armed with the proof of fraud, immediately dissolved the LLC, voiding the partnership agreement that was built on a lie. He was out his initial $50,000, which my lawyer advised him he could sue Mark for in civil court, but he had managed to escape the sinking ship before it dragged him and his family to the bottom. Mark was arrested. He tried to post bail, but his assets were frozen as part of the ongoing fraud investigation. He called me from jail once. He didn't sound arrogant anymore. He sounded small, desperate, and pathetic. He cried, he begged. He said he did it all for us, that he just wanted to give me a better life. The words were hollow, meaningless. "You didn't do it for us, Mark," I said, my voice cold and final. "Yeah, you did it for you. You didn't want to build a future with me. You wanted to use my foundation to build your own castle. The adult business is over." I hung up the phone and blocked his number. I filed for divorce immediately. Because the house was a premarital inherited asset and all the fraud had been documented, he had no claim to it. He had, quite literally, lost everything in his gamble to take what wasn't his. He ended up taking a plea deal to avoid a longer sentence, serving a year in a low-security prison and getting 5 years of probation. He was ordered to pay restitution to Greg. His reputation was ruined. Today, 2 years later, life is quiet and it is my own. Lily is 7 now, and she's thriving. She still sleeps in her little bedroom under the same roof that sheltered me as a child. The house doesn't sigh anymore. It breathes. It breathes with the life we've built here, a life of peace and security, free from secrets and lies. Sometimes I'll be sitting in that same worn armchair by the window, watching Lily play in the yard, and I'll think about how close I came to losing it all. But Mark made one fatal miscalculation. He thought my love for my home was a weakness, a sentimentality he could exploit. He never understood that it wasn't the bricks and mortar I was fighting for. It was the principle. It was the one piece of the world that was truly mine. And I learned that in the real world, in the world of adult business, you don't get to keep what you haven't earned, and you never, ever try to take what a woman is willing to fight for.